I
So what?
missed you,
How
Eddie.
is it okay? How is it okay to appropriate gender, but
We're
not
going
okay to
longer.
appropriate race?
Eddie
In
mentioned
what
this. Eddie
in the
mentioned
chat?
this in the chat.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. It's a
because
great question.
it's just a skin color, isn't it? If
When
it's
you
just
say
a matter of genitalia,
when you say appropriate gender, are you talking about
you can
like
put on a
drag?
woman's face and still have a penis. You can compete in women's sports. It's okay to do that. But the moment you say, "Well, I identify as black," I identify as uh, dark-colored Indian, not Native American, like in India, like
Not
in
feathers. Yeah.
Kashmir. That type, that's me.
So
I
I'll ask an even less like important question. Why is it okay not to? Why is it not okay to appropriate age? Why can't I identify as a 20-year-old?
all
That's a
right.
good question.
It's just
I
age. You're
I
not
think
being ageist, are you?
I
Is
think
to
you're
be,
comparing. I think it's apples and oranges in this case.
which argument? Age
Both.
or
Both. Yeah. So when it comes, because we're talking about mainly transgenders versus the weird people who think they're black and they're white and shit. If I'm going down the science route, gender dysphoria is when there's a hormonal or chemical imbalance which makes you feel like a different gender. That's not exclusive to race. It's not exclusive to you're
so you can feel
born.
like a different race too.
You can't. No, no.
I can.
That's
Why not?
dude. Coming from someone who hung out with a lot of black people and I thought I was like black in high school. No, that's a cultural thing. That's not like I actually think my skin color is fucking black. You're
Do you
talking
think?
about two different spectrums.
Do you
Okay,
think
It's
so
not
then
different?
comparable.
all you need to do is just take some melatonin therapy, or just
Is
have
that a thing?
like
Do you think?
I'm making things up. I don't know, or
So
get skin grafts from somebody who has darker colored skin,
you
and
can
you are black.
you can do that, but the source of it. So gender dysphoria, depending on your point of view, is viewed as either one, you lean into it and you become a transgender person. That's your choice. Or two, you try to treat gender dysphoria to act the birth, the sex that you were at birth. To say that's equivalent or comparable to trying to identify a different race is just not the same thing at all.
Well, you're born with a set of chromosomes, and that's what you are.
Yes, and then there's chemical imbalances which make you feel different. That's called gender dysphoria. That's
So
not
I
saying
would
that you
say.
approve of the transgender community, but that's what it is. Gender dysphoria is that there's a chemical imbalance in you that makes you feel different. There's
So why?
not a race equivalent.
So why I would not say why I would say it's not the same is I'm one who believes that men and women not only are biologically different but also think differently, have emotions differently, and are different in so many ways. Whereas a white person and a black person, the only real difference is just their pigment and where their ancestors might have come from. So there's no real difference there. So whereas gender subjectivity and racial subjectivity, I guess it just doesn't, for me. I mean, I see where the argument is coming from, but I can't really make that argument because I don't see race as being relevant
Well,
as
it
I
can be
see gender.
appropriated. If you're a man that can, paint a face like a woman, well
Well,
then
anything can be appropriated, but you're talking about two completely different spectrums.
disagree. I think it has to
Hmm.
do with biology. Well,
Yes,
once an act. If you're putting on clothes, if you're a transvestite, a man who dresses as a woman, or a woman that dresses like a man,
sure.
there's no biological function going on there.
There is hormonal imbalance. I just said that. There is a biological background to it. Now, I'm not saying that that is taking a position on the transgender issue. I'm just saying there is obviously a hormonal imbalance of gender dysphoria. How
Hmm.
you go about dealing with gender dysphoria is up for a political discussion.
So then, what about
But
racial dysphoria?
there's not racial dysphoria. That is not a thing.
Well, it's
That
not
is
been
not
brought
a
to the
thing.
public, much like transgenderism. It's just not been brought to the public yet.
No, Eddie, I'm sorry. You're out of your league here. There's no, you don't get
There's no
born
documentation of it so far.
That's
so
what I
far.
think. That's what
Dude,
I think is Mike is. That's what I think Mike is saying is that
there is
there's
no science saying that a white person is born feeling black. There is no science behind that. Now there is as I said, there is cultural aspects of it. Who is that
Mhm.
chick? Rachel Dole is now, who was born white, hung out, pretty much raised and hung out with black people, so she felt like she was part of that culture. That's not the same thing as being born feeling like a different race. There is
Mhm.
no science behind it. Now, again, gender dysphoria, however you feel about the transgender community aside, is a biological thing that you're born
Mhm.
with.
Mm-hmm.
So the
You're
appropriating
either
race is a thing, appropriating age, which is weird, is a thing, but both of those are not comparable to the transgender issue because, again, regardless how you feel about transgenders, that is a biological, hormonal thing. There is
And
no
compared
evidence
to
of anything comparable to a racial thing.
not
race,
yet.
which I believe is a cultural
Yes,
Mhm.
construct, is race being a cultural. Like I think that's why I feel like the age, the age appropriation might be a better comparison because that is an actual biological thing. Because
I would go with that.
if someone identifies as an older or younger person, they might have the maturity, but then you have to create standard of maturity at what age and kind of thing. If
Yeah,
someone's 30, but they identify as if someone's 30, but they identify as 13, um, because mentally they are 13, but biologically they're not. That's the kind of, I think, a fairer comparison to
I
the gender dysphoria.
I would agree if it's actually one of those things like this. This is fucking awful comparison, like the movie Jack
Oh
with
yeah, 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 yeah,
Robin
yeah.
Williams. If that was a thing, then yeah, are you actually like, are you just faking it, or are you actually your brain is that of a 13
Right,
year old child? If
right.
that is a thing, then I would agree that's a more comparable thing. I would agree with that.
But I
But as
think
far as the racing, there's no science behind
and Eddie, if I guess if, I don't want to speak for you, but I just want to kind of get where you're coming from. The cultural reaction to a guy dressing like a girl and talking like a girl and putting on makeup and dressing like a girl is regarded as acceptable and okay, and that's fine. That's their decision, whatever. Why is it then if a white guy puts on blackface, that is just Satan and evil and oh my gosh, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Much the same thing. It's okay to, it's, oh, well, I feel there's a large discrepancy that it's okay to appropriate gender to where
Mm-hmm.
there are safety concerns,
Mm.
but it's not okay to appropriate race. Not yet.
it. Safety
Okay.
concerns as far as like sports.
Well, if there are females being hurt by people who were born male in
So
sports,
athletics, yeah.
Yeah.
athletics, and additionally in the prison system. There are
And those,
significant harms that are occurring. Women getting raped, women getting pregnant because they
yep.
can't speak out because somebody puts down that they're a female and they haven't been haven't had an adjustment surgery that reflects that. There are
And
significant harms that are occurring because of that.
And I think those are valid points, and I don't think anyone would disagree. Those are valid points. But to compare it, like I said, there are pieces of shit men who use the transgender issue for their own gain. I'm not going to say they don't exist, but there are legitimate people who have hormonal imbalances where they feel a certain way. But again, that's not comparable to the race issue because there's no science behind you being born feeling like you're a different race.
What if
There's
there's a
simply no science
choice?
behind it.
What if I choose?
Well, then that's not the same
There's
thing. It's still not the same thing.
there's never been a dysphoria. I just choose to have black skin.
That's still not the same thing because there's still a science behind gender dysphoria. If you're making a choice that you want black skin, that's not the same thing as saying there's a hormonal imbalance for gender dysphoria. So you're still comparing apples to oranges.
Well, having gender dysphoria well, you're making a presupposition. I can make One can make a choice to change their gender as
Sure,
equally as they can make a choice to change their race, or
sure.
not necessarily race, but skin color.
So you think people with not with gender dysphoria, but you think the majority of the transgender community are making an active choice. They don't feel that way. They just want to be a woman. You think
That's
that's the
something
case.
I can't get into their mind. It's a choice.
But
Yeah,
that's
either way, it's a choice. There's
it
a
is and it
choice that's
isn't.
going
Because
on.
but still, yeah, sure. You make a choice because of the way you feel. I'm an example. In high school and middle school, I felt like I was part of this black culture.
Mhm.
I never ever said I am black. I identify as black. I feel like I'm black, but I felt like I was accepted in that culture. So yeah, I can make a choice. I mean, changing my color of skin would be weird, but there is still science behind gender dysphoria, that there's hormonal imbalances and things going on in their brains that they feel like they are the other gender.
Mhm.
And then the way they react to that is, as you said, yes, making a choice. I'm going to transition. But there is still science behind that choice.
Mhm.
Like, so if I had cancer, I can make a choice to treat it or not treat it. Doesn't change the fact that I have cancer. But
Mhm.
with the race thing, there's no science or base for me to feel like I'm black,
Well,
except in
if
a
it's a
cultural level.
choice, well, you're getting into culture now. We're talking
Yeah,
culture and biology.
yes, but
Yeah.
but in your case, you're saying you're appropriating race, that you aren't born feeling like you're a different race. People are born feeling like they're a different gender. That's science. That's not me just making shit up.
Mhm.
So saying that I choose to be black, yeah, but there's no scientific basis for why I feel like I should be black. It's strictly cultural. When if I feel like I'm a woman based on hormonal imbalances, that's because I feel like a woman and I want to make that choice to transition.
Mhm.
Comparing the two is simply not a good comparison. It's apples and oranges.
Both, well, I think it is a good comparison because both are biological choices.
They're not though.
So I'm gonna pull the chain, pull the lever, pull the trigger, whatever on this
They're
because
overtone.
we're getting into the realm of repeating, and I think it's a great discussion. But I just feel like we're falling into a trap of repeating ourselves and not really.
It's a hell of
So
a time bomb to throw in at the last minute, too.
no,
It
Let's go
is.
back to submarines.
it's not
Imagine
that. I
if you
mean,
were like
if
on a
we op-
submarine
if
and
we
there was no
yeah,
pigment.
no, if we opened with this, I think I would do the same because no, it's a good discussion to have. What I would recommend is us all like going back and listening to this episode, seeing the points we're making, writing it down, and then probably revisiting because it is a good
Sure.
discussion to have. Just right now, I think we're a bit ill prepared, and because of that, we're just kind of trying to talk over each other a little bit. So
Oh,
I
I
don't
came
want to.
prepared, bitch.
How you okay? You can go ahead and untuck it and have a real conversation.
I never untuck. I stay tight.
Anyway,
That'd be a good
um,
T-shirt
untuck it.
I never
or
untuck.
or a bumper sticker.
I vacation in Untucket.
That's in Africa, isn't it? Anyways,
Yeah.
in Africa,
Untucket.
I
Nantucket
am
and Untucket.
untucket.
It's
He's
like,
like an
oh,
Egyptian pharaoh.
it sounds like a Family Guy joke. It's like, oh, we won a weekend trip to Untucket. You mean Nantucket? No, no, no.
No, no, no.
Recording stopped. Stop recording. There we go.